Today, this afternoon, we're bringing a special Facebook Live to you today, talking about our opportunity zones, our federal opportunity zones in the city of Atlanta. Today, we're going to be having a discussion with Dr. Ed Smith, who runs a federal opportunity zone program at Invest Atlanta. And our very special guest today is going to be Dr. Sherita Howard. She is a principal in Diversified Financial Management Group in the Atlanta City's office. Sorry about that. On what Atlanta-based developers and small business owners need to know about the Federal Opportunity Zone's tax incentive and how they can utilize this tool in conjunction with other resources to promote social impact and inclusive economic development in Atlanta's 26 federal opportunity zones. It's very interesting to note that Atlanta does have these 20 federal opportunity zones, and the opportunity zones, as Dr. Howard is going to tell us, are designed to stimulate investment in parts of the city that need additional investment to create jobs and to build sustainable communities and robust economic communities. Now, what's very interesting to note here during COVID, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is part of our loan portfolios and our disaster relief program. We've made roughly 11 loans inside our federal opportunity zones in the city of Atlanta, and that is saving more than 100 jobs just in our federal opportunity zones. Just as a little bit of background, in 2019, we launched our federal opportunity zone program to promote social impact outcomes in Atlanta's opportunity zones. Diversified Financial Management Group is a CPA firm that provides personalized financial services to individuals and businesses. So you'll have a ton of resources today to be able to help you understand opportunities in the federal opportunity zones. And these two speakers that we have will also be serving as a reference for you after this Facebook Live is open. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our group today, and we'll get on with our chat.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you again.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good. It's Friday. We've made it through another
Yes,
week.
another
I've
week,
lost
another week.
I've lost count of how many days it is, so we're all very glad that it's Friday and the weekend
Yes,
is here. So
I think that
exactly.
I'm on day 46 of my victory period. So, we're all in this together.
Yes,
So, just working hard to maintain ourselves and work together to get through this crisis that we're experiencing. And, good to acknowledge that. But I know you all came to this program to learn more about the federal opportunity zones and to learn about how we as a city can utilize this tool in conjunction with other tools to promote inclusive economic development. But before we do that, given that we're honored to have Nathan Regan, Vice President of Economic Development here, and Dr. Howard, thank you again for coming on board. Before we dive into our topics, perhaps we could spend a little bit more time on understanding your backgrounds and career trajectories to really understand how we got to this point. What role do you all play in promoting inclusive economic development, and how can we see your roles transitioning not only in federal opportunity zones but in light of COVID-19? So I guess perhaps Nathan, could you start with your background and professional experience, and followed by Dr. Howard?
yeah, well, and again, Dr. Howard, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We know you've been instrumental in helping us navigate federal opportunity zones. So we appreciate you donating your time again to us today. Thank you so much. My name is Nathan Regan, so I'm the Senior Vice President for Economic Development at Invest Atlanta. The Invest Atlanta is the city's economic development agent, and so we are responsible for everything from entrepreneurship to the startup ecosystem, to large tech companies, to national, international business attraction, to small business lending, which is so critical and crucial in this time of need, where our small businesses in the city need access to capital. Creating healthy communities and vibrant economic communities is really the mission of Invest Atlanta. So this chat today really helps us put all of that in perspective, and we thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. And again, it's Friday. I mean, it's like it's all rolling all together here at the
Woohoo.
moment. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Dr. Sherita Howard. I am a CPA as well as I am a U.S. federal tax attorney. I started out on Capitol Hill and still stay there quite often in the auditing as far as GAO and those of the like investigative auditing of different programs that are utilized throughout our country. My involvement with Opportunity Zones is I was actually one of the tax attorneys and CPAs who were originally on the roundtable discussions when Opportunity Zones first came aboard with Cory Booker. So I have been around this particular realm for a while. Before that, I worked in what we called empowerment zones and brownfields and all kinds of other things that deal with community development and just allowing, communities to be able to thrive and grow. I will definitely say I came here for the Olympics, ironically, and just ended up staying. And so I've been transferring back and forth between Atlanta and DC for quite some time, but it has definitely been exciting to see Atlanta grow. I mean, she has flourished to no end. From being here in '96 to what we see now today in 2020 is just amazing. And definitely having Invest Atlanta to be there as a vehicle for a lot of businesses who ordinarily would have not even thought about how could I even get into this space is such a valuable tool and a value add to the city. And so we definitely want to thank you for your contribution.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'll offer a little bit on myself before we move on to a little bit more information on our federal opportunity zones. I'm assuming that those of you that are tuning in are somewhat familiar with our Opportunity Zone initiative, but I see that we have some guests that are online that I'm not as familiar with. So again, my name is Ed Smith. I manage the Federal Opportunity Zone initiative for Invest Atlanta. I'm a Georgia native and happy to be here working with Invest Atlanta to utilize this new economic development tool. I have a background in economic development, particularly in working with public-private partnerships and helping organizations identify a variety of capital sources in order to further promote their business plans, particularly when their business plans are aligned with job creation or other types of pro-social economic development activity. So with that being said, and then Nathan has been at Invest Atlanta for 3 years now, I believe.
It feels like 3 years, Ed, but it's really only been a year and a half. So it's been a very packed full. It does feel like 3 years. I think we've done 3 years worth of work in a year and a half.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. But thank you for the extended work anniversary.
Right. Well, no, the impact has been there. So as we move forward, Dr. Howard, I'd like to toss it over to you so we can dive a little bit more into what are federal opportunity zones. Can you please provide our viewing audience an overview of the federal opportunity zone tax incentive, and then I'll follow up with what Invest Atlanta is doing in the opportunity zone space.
Sure. The great thing about the Opportunity Zones, it was created in 2017, along with the Tax Cuts and Job Act. And so therefore, its main purpose was to be able to, I want to say, spearhead or either drum up of us being interested in distressed properties and bringing real value and capital that was needed in order to uplift those communities. And in return for doing that, investors received several tax breaks, as well as time. There's some time capital components that go with it, but overall, the main basis of it was to be able to come in, have investors, those that people who would have never even thought about being investors, come in and really be able to uplift communities that were completely in what we would consider to be an economic distress scenario. Inside of that process, that charge was given to governors to be able to identify those tracts that were in their states that not only meet a certain level of threshold as far as the stress of community, but also those that had medium income that were in those areas as well. And so if you look at it overall, the basis of it was to create a planned community component where everyone rolling up their sleeves, getting in there and being able to say, hey, we can change this around. we can be able to improve our community so that it benefits those of, everyone at the end of the day. So that's basically what that particular spearhead and movement was behind that. And looking at that, that could include inside of the qualified opportunity businesses, it will be land, it will be property that you have as far as in a trade and or business. The property has to have been purchased after 2017. Let's make sure that we're really clear on the date and where that goes to. And then it goes all the way through an effective date of 2028. That was definitely updated, which a lot of us are happy to see, but in the final rulings that have come out. So it goes all the way through that 2028. So anything after 2017, plan going all the way through to the 2028 period. And so a lot of those items means that first you got to be able to get certified, and there are different pieces to be able to make this work. I mean, there's so many acronyms, QOF, QOB, and there are the like. Yes, I mean, we're all over the place with acronyms here. But that is the basis of what that was supposed to be. So if we look at now, meaning in our 2020 year, and so meaning, for instance, if you're putting in something as of today, it sits in there, and let's say you hold on to that particular property or whatsoever for 5 years, you get a 10% reduction in those capital gains. If we're moving further into the notion of the 7 years, then you're at the 15 reduction piece. But if you hold it all the way into the 10th year, that's where you get the most benefit, and we're starting to see where 100% of those capital gains are being completely drawn back. So the incentive here is to be able to say, hey, not only am I going to come into the community, but I'm looking to be able to be in this community long term to be able to give the greatest amount of benefit for the whole, but at the same time in return, being able to get some relief on those capital gains. And as we all know lately, what we've seen with the stock market and everything of that, this creates a great time for those who have sold their stocks to come on and see us in the quality opportunity zone period, because there's a place for you to be able to eliminate those capital gains here.
Okay, great. Thank you for that overview. Perhaps I'd like to dive into what we are doing at Invest Atlanta to use this tool in our 26 opportunity zone. So as mentioned, governors were able to designate up to 25% of eligible census tracts that were experiencing a level of 20% poverty rate. They were able to designate these census tracts to be eligible to receive this form of investment. One thing that's important to point out is that the federal opportunity zone tax incentive should not be confused with the state of Georgia opportunity zone tax credit. That is a common question that we receive. There are two separate initiatives. One is a state of Georgia initiative, and one is a federal tax incentive. Also, as we continue throughout this conversation, it's important to note that while we are very knowledgeable on this topic, I'd like to point out that the information received on this webinar is for informational purposes only. And as you continue to engage with opportunity zone investors or opportunity zone project sponsors or service providers, as a reminder to do your due diligence, and the information that is relayed and expressed as part of this is only to offer information on our initiative and allow members of the Atlanta community to receive a general overview as to what this federal tax incentive is. So as we continue, there are over 8,700 designated opportunity zones in the country. There are 260 of these census tracts in the state of Georgia. 26 of them are located in Atlanta. And again, as Dr. Howard mentioned, these census tracts were designated to encourage investment that would improve the built environment and promote entrepreneurship in some of the country's most distressed communities. The opportunity zones in Atlanta are primarily in the southern and southwestern areas of the city. These areas are, if you were to go to atlopportunityzones.com and click on our map, you would notice that these opportunity zones, many of them are overlaid with other incentives that Nathan and his team and other members of the Invest Atlanta community can utilize to help fill out the capital stack, again, for mission-aligned projects. So whether these are tools that can either help increase the rate of return or decrease development costs, there are a number of tools that we have in Invest Atlanta, which you'll hear about shortly, in order to promote mission-aligned projects. There are over 86,000 people living in opportunity zones. The median household income in the opportunity zone, that's in Atlanta. The median household income for those living in opportunity zones is 26,000. 70% of the households in opportunity zones are renter occupied. As we continue to work through this, a question that comes up is, what are we doing at Invest Atlanta, and how are we seeking to leverage this new asset? And again, we are working to attract private investment that will further improve the built environment, promote initiatives that assist small business owners and developers, which is very timely given the current pandemic that we're experiencing. And lastly, one of our overall strategies is to work with project sponsors and investors that can help provide quality job opportunities for those living and working in Atlanta's opportunity zone. So what outcomes are we seeking at Invest Atlanta, right? Living wage job creation, projects that lead to living wage job creation, projects that lead to affordable housing, access to commercial activity and retail activity in areas that have been historically underserved and underinvested, community-wide revitalization projects, transit-oriented development, or supporting projects that allow people to move using alternative modes of transportation throughout Atlanta. And I would also say projects that not only improve the built environment, but projects that utilize sustainable business practices, whether environmentally sustainable or socially sustainable, and can lead to a sense of civic pride here in Atlanta. It's important to note that at Invest Atlanta, this is a federal tax incentive. These are private investors and private project sponsors. So Invest Atlanta is serving as can serve in certain circumstances as a facilitator to help promote those social impact outcomes that were just mentioned. Lastly, the 4 components of the Invest Atlanta Opportunity Zone initiative include community engagement. So before we entered into the current shelter-in-place scenario, which we're undertaking now, we served and participated in a number of community engagement events, both locally and nationally. Another component is the identification of mission-aligned projects and mission-aligned entrepreneurs to introduce them to the rest of the Invest Atlanta team to help explain the various products that we have. We also work to cultivate relationships with social impact funds and social impact investors and highlight the pipeline and projects that are here in Atlanta that are aligned with their underwriting criteria and social impact outcomes. And lastly, there's a strong data and reporting component to what we're doing. The federal, when we deal with any type of initiative, it's important to track the events that are held, the location of the events, to make sure that we are able to fully implement a 26 zone strategy to fully encompass the communities here in Atlanta, to do research on how this investment or potential investment can lead to the outcomes that we're seeking, and general research on best practices and lessons learned so we can further replicate this in coming years and offer insight to those who would like to implement initiatives similar to what we have had here in Atlanta. So with that being said, I know one of the topics that's of high concern and high interest with members of the viewing audience is COVID-19 and how the current pandemic is impacting our personal lives, our professional lives, what's happening in our communities. So Nathan, I'd like to turn it over to you for a little bit before going back to Dr. Howard. And you all have put together have a number of tools and incentives to support businesses. Some have been created recently to support those affected by COVID-19, whether or not they're located in opportunity zones. So could you spend a little time enlightening the audience on some of the tools that are available at Invest Atlanta, particularly for those who are impacted by COVID-19?
Definitely. And, Ed, thank you for the summary of what opportunity zones are and how we use them. At the end of the day, this is about people and it's about communities. Everything that we do in Invest Atlanta has it as our focus is people and communities. And to that end, when we saw COVID crisis coming, and I want to give a special shout out to our fearless leader, Dr. Eloisa Clemente. She had the foresight enough to be able to see that we were going to need to act immediately to support our small businesses across the city. So we did come up with a business continuity loan fund that we launched just 2 short weeks after the lockdown was really instituted. So we have been working tirelessly to be able to get working capital into the hands of small businesses who need it. They need that money now to be able to sustain this economic shock. And so and a bit of good news, we will make our last loans of that $1.5 million. We will exhaust all those this week. We'll have the final cohort going through our credit review committee. And so what I love to talk about this, we got to bring it back to the community level, to our small businesses and communities. And so that's the reason why I mentioned earlier, out of the loans that we've made out of our business continuity loan fund, 11 of those are located inside of opportunity zones inside the city of Atlanta. And that is changing people's lives. That is giving them the capital to be able to sustain their operations, pay their lease payment on their storefront, be able to retain employees. Over 100 jobs have been saved through the Business Continuity Loan Fund. Apart from that loan fund, we have 10 other loan portfolios that small businesses can take advantage of. And so what I love to tell people is, whether you're a national company looking to relocate your headquarters to Atlanta, or you're a startup company, you can come to Invest Atlanta, and we have a whole of Atlanta type of approach to be able to build vibrant communities and economies. So those 10 loan portfolios you can find at investatlanta.com. So if you're listening to our Facebook Live today, you should go to investatlanta.com to small businesses, and you can see a list of all of our loan portfolios. If you're concerned about COVID and the effects that COVID is having on our economy in Atlanta, if you go to our homepage, you'll see at the very top of our homepage is a new and revised COVID link. And in that link, you will see Facebook Live events just like this one from companies who we've interviewed who've been able to take this COVID crisis and pivot into being able to survive during this time. So we've interviewed The Gathering Spot. Jasmine from Gooder is amazing. We did a venture capital. We've interviewed 2 venture capital firms. So there are resources out there. We are here to help. And so, see us as a resource. And I don't want to take up too much time. So
Nathan, I've got a burning question before we transition back to Dr. Howard, if that's okay. I know we spent a lot of times when we were in the office around the proverbial water cooler discussing economic mobility and job creation and the importance of that when people come to Invest Atlanta. I know when I engage, so we talk about the small businesses, but we also engage with medium to large scale developers, and the job creation component is something that's very important as it relates to economic mobility when they come into our offices. So can you offer a brief highlight on the importance of job creation and economic mobility when you come to talk to Invest Atlanta representatives?
Totally. And I miss our times around the water cooler. I have to say, I never thought I would say that, but I totally miss those times. But Invest Atlanta is laser focused on economic mobility. And what does that mean? We want to make sure that the tools that we have in our quiver, all the programs that we have, all of our programmatic dollars go to make sure they help everyone in Atlanta, all Atlantans, to be able to rise. And so when we talk about economic mobility, it's about good and promising jobs. And so one thing I love about our opportunity zones is the sectors that we look at, for example, logistics, who can offer good and promising jobs to people we want to help move up the socioeconomic ladder. Those kind of things are perfect for our opportunity zones. And so we're very, very focused on making sure that middle wage job creation is a big focus for our city. We need that. I think COVID has changed everything. We are now living in a different world where we are going to need CapEx. We're going to need large investments coming into the city. We're going to need big corporate headquarters, but we can't forget that we serve everyone in the city. So we're going to need good and promising jobs and middle wage job growth, and opportunity zones are a fantastic way to stimulate that investment and also help with economic mobility. Great way to tie that in.
Thank you, Nathan. And then to wrap it up, Dr. Howard, I know you have a local perspective based on your location here in Atlanta and your interactions with local businesses. You also have a broader national perspective given your line of work and some of the clients that you have. So I was just wondering if you could shed some insight on some of the conversations that business owners and entrepreneurs have had in relation to COVID-19, things that they should consider, particularly those in the opportunity zones, right? So already before COVID-19, these were some of the most distressed communities in the country. So as we wrap up, can you just talk a little bit about some of the conversations you've been having within your networks around COVID-19 and how we can best support our communities?
Yes, actually, there have been questions surrounding 4 main items because of the way that the rules are set up. So just to let everyone know, December 2019, the IRS released its final rules for opportunity zones. So please make sure that you're looking at the final, most recent guidance for everything. So some of the things that have come up is the 180-day rule for the fund investment period. Because of COVID, this has been extended. So that means that if your 180-day period expired on or after April the 1st or before July the 15th, your new date of expiration is now July the 15th. So let me say it again. That is your new date. So if you were already in the period of that 180 day for you to be able to put funds in, and your expiration period was on or after April the 1st, but before July the 15th, your new period to be able to put anything in is now July the 15th. COVID has, unfortunately, created some nuances here, but at the same time, those of you who were thinking about getting things involved, hey, you have some extra time to come and see us and get involved and be able to help the communities out. The next piece was the working capital for the safe harbor. I get this question a lot. So as we know, you normally have that 31-month period window where you have to deploy your working capital. Because of COVID, we now have an additional 24 months. That is a very, very long time, especially in this particular component, because it now talks about you deploying your working capital, your funds that you need in order to acquire, for you to construct, if you're going to do any rehab work or anything of that nature in a lot of the distressed areas that are in the city of Atlanta in an opportunity zone location. The next piece is going to deal with the reasonable cause. I've seen somebody already post a question about that today on something else about, hey, what about the reasonable cause piece about making sure that you have 90% inside of the fund? COVID is one of those natural disaster items. So here you are with your original description of saying, hey, I wasn't able to meet reasonable cause because of COVID. So you have this scenario where, the community now is like, oh my gosh, all of the rules that were set in place and people who were already doing things when you all were there in the office, you were processing paperwork just as normally as everyone else. And then all of a sudden out of the sky, boom, we're dealing with this. So those items have been changed as well. And then the last piece that has been brought up as a conversation piece is the reinvestment rule. And as we know, you have a 12-month period to get that reinvestment in. So let's say, for instance, you were an individual that had already filled out your application and you had turned it in. And so you're right at your 12-month period. The guideline of what they're saying right now as far as the Treasury and IRS is, even though you turned in your application, you were waiting for approval, you have to at least show that you did that part in order for you now to be able to still invest and take opportunity of that tax benefit into getting that reinvested into another property. So those are the four main areas right now that have been hotbed discussions, because a lot of people were in limbo at the start of this, where they were already putting their money into projects, they had already applied, things were being expired, and they were wondering if they were still going to be able to take advantage of the 5, 7, and 10 components. The good thing about it is I'm glad that the Treasury Department did step up and be able to give some guidance and saying, hey, we understand and we're all in it together. So that's really, really good in that point.
Thank you so much for that update on how COVID-19 has impacted our industry. In order to be respectful of time, I know that we've had a very lively and vibrant conversation. Nathan, could you please provide some final closing remarks, perhaps on how people can learn more about Invest Atlanta and the tools that we have?
Yeah, thanks so much. And Dr. Howard, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would just like to, say that, Invest Atlanta is your resource in the city of Atlanta. Ed on this line, Dr. Howard, we're all here as a resource. You should check out our website on a regular basis. I know we've had a ton of people who have been applying for loans, and my best advice has been to check back with us frequently and on our website, just to make sure that any updates, you'll be able to see those. Get on our distribution list. During the COVID time, it's so important to be able to somehow pivot from what you're normally doing. If you're making widgets or if you're, doing brand management, you've got to learn how to get onto the distribution list and make sure that when loans are coming out or grants are coming out, you're aware of those and how to apply for those. And just remember that opportunity zones are still active and going. And we see those as a driver of economic development to revitalize communities and also our economy. And so we're very, very glad to have you on with us today. And thank you so much for taking the time. And this is just the first in many. So Ed, kudos to you for getting this one off the ground.
Yes.
And thank you for being our first guest. Thank you guys so much for joining us. All questions will be on our chat here. We'll post this to our Facebook Live page on the Invest Atlanta page on Facebook, so you can find all this information online. And thank you so much again for joining us.
All right. Thank you all. Stay in touch. Stay safe.